Sergei Kiselev, who will
Cats and growing regional X MSK-IX experience. Нет перевода названия.
we somehow don't have any translation to the Russian language, and let's listen to him.
Добрый день, коллеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Sergei Kiselev, and I'm running development projects of the Moscow Internet Exchange. And just in very brief, I would like to thank the Association for their database and the statistics they are picking up on Internet Exchange activities. That's pretty much useful, and some figures are even used in my presentation. Actually, that's a presentation in English that I'm showing, and I will talk in Russian. So if you're interested, then you turn to me. It will be translated into Russian. The topic of the presentation is called herding cats and development of Internet Exchange. It's slightly provocative, but I will explain my way as we move further why. Now we got it. Actually, what herding cats and Internet Exchange, what makes them similar? Because they're incorporated by some sort of natural properties. Because cats and networks are autonomous and self-reliant financially, and a little bit self-loving. Therefore, creating a community out of network is pretty difficult, just like out of cats. The situation resembles when a shop is free and open. Then it's you first have to pick up one person to be invited, and then a second, and then a third, and then you will have a turnout. And the same about internet exchanges. And the second point I would like to make is that that the values we're talking about at ENOG are pretty much qualitative rather than quantitative characteristics. So it makes it pretty difficult while after having a conversation about them to clearly understand what is what and which is which revenue and expenditure based. If we're talking about peering values, first of all, one of the elements is that traffic is never limited, essentially, but from the point of view of internet exchanges and their values, it's important to maintain its due quality, which means no port overloads and minimum delays when exchanging between the participants, between the members, and that gives you an opportunity of not only enrichment of the network, so from the point of view of peering and stability and routing, but that gives you also an opportunity for different apps which would be pretty sensitive to delays and speed to work in a quality way and enrich the network like that. We're talking about game apps, we're talking about financial apps, we're talking about industrial apps, and that's very sensitive, delay sensitive. And apart from that fact, when at some point of community of networks, there is some conversation. There's not just conversation. That's pretty much a marketplace on which everyone may buy a piece of transit from someone else and sell someone something and exchange things and trade things, and that contributes to the development of markets and networks and their economies. And apart from that, peering at traffic exchange points gives you an opportunity to save on traffic if you actually because your rates are about 15 euros and like across peers, and we take a point with 50 participants, 50 members, just to set up a full-fledged, fully connected network. That means that a member has to start to 25 once, and that's 375 euros, and that's any port on an exchange to be available. And if there's more peers taking part in the exchange, that's economically already feasible, very interesting. If we're talking about communities, it's interesting how it grows. In my presentation, I will take an example of two communities, and that's Rostov Point, and that's south of Russia. And we can see that the number of members is actually within a couple of dozens, and exchange speed is the proper. So over 5 years, this point produces a substantial growth pace, which if you approximate this curve, there will be quite a linear growth. If you look into the traffic exchange point that is larger, that is higher, that's Novosibirsk, and that's the geographic middle of Russia. And if you look all across the way east to west, west to east, and we're talking about the number of networks closer to 50, and the traffic bitrate exchange is tens of gigabits, and by the whole trend there's a linear growth, and it implies that that's a long-term project, this traffic exchange point. If you look at all our exchange points, traffic exchange points managed by MSK-IX, there's a total of 9 of them, and they are sprawled all over Russia, all over the Russian Federation, and from the point of view of administrative division and to federal counties. There is an exchange point per county, per district. The Moscow district point is the largest one, while the rest are already dependent on the scale of communication, on the scale of exchange, and we'll talk later about it in the condition. Largely speaking, the Moscow Internet Exchange is running 9 points, and as I have already said, what the statistics of Euro-IX say that the Moscow exchange points hold 72 unique networks that are not present in none of the other exchange points of the Euro-IX participants. That's quite a suite. And if we talk about all the points, that's over 500 unique autonomous systems that are present not only in one traffic exchange points, but on others. And from this point of view, we can see for ourselves two directions of development. On the one hand, that's a better opportunity to get connected to our existing points of exchange, traffic exchange, with the use of various mechanisms, like on one agreement that could be that's achievable, and also from the point of view of geographic reach, just to give an opportunity for the operators to communicate with us and develop a remote connections technology. 3 years ago, we started with an agreement that implies an opportunity of technical interaction coordination for the provision of high-quality exchange, and that used to require 2 agreements. Then today we have a mechanism when there's a turnkey solution available for you from the cable operator in Ukraine also. So the exchange point itself, region-wise, regional, that includes 2 components, and I will give you a nutshell picture, and we'll see how much is different from the ideal and how to live with that. There's a straightforward requirement. They should be positioned with networks, a minimum of 5 networks to commence a traffic exchange, and preferably it should 5 are to connect in the short line. And that's a quality infrastructure, that power, the proper electricity and power supply, and maybe remote support to deal with issues, and that's a service of cable plotting without free from political preferences. That should be a totally neutral network, totally neutral environment, and switching equipment also is important with the right capacities, and that supports distributed switching and prevents from unfavorable traffic to penetrate through networks in this exchange point. And the compulsory element is a website with the necessary information, with the service statistics of the networks joined, and how to become a participant, and pretty frequently that's filling in a question and becoming a member of a traffic exchange point. In the case of Russia, traffic exchange point looks like a regular calm operator having a network with an opportunity to get licensed and get connected to the other networks, and we'll talk about it later. And the most important thing is the organization, the person that's involved in operating the networks and dealing with the networks. And on the one hand, they deliver something that they can get at because of getting connected to one or another point. And if these are pay services for a traffic exchange point, then it's necessary to support some sort of office, to maintain some sort of office, to create documents, frequently not only financial ones, but also the ones that are required by the regulator, by the COM regulator. If we're talking about Moscow and St. Petersburg, it's in fact 2 large cities and 2 telecom capitals of Russia, and then they got a telehouse age that was created in the last century, and there's a huge number of networks that the quality of work of which depends on the public infrastructure, and there's not always generators available. And on the other hand, then dynamic is the development of there's a dynamic development of the segment of data centers, and they're a little bit different in profile from each other, and they as a rule provide pretty high-quality services, but every one of them has a very little number of small number of networks. We're talking about just dozens of existing ones, and so it looks like every one of them has to either pull off their own optics or hire somebody else's to get connected. In the Russian regions, the situation is a little bit worse from the point of view of practically there's practically no neutral infrastructure, and the good hardware belongs to one or another operator. And on the neutral sides, there might not be any other infrastructure available, only just a power point, and that's it, electro power point, and now not round-the-clock access, and there's remote hand service very rarely happening, and there's very expensive transit, and local traffic is not large. Because most resources have their own technical sites and hostings and collocations in the country and abroad. From the point of view of the infrastructure itself, as the previous speaker said, the equipment is not that large. You can count them by fingers, and one of the important points is that this list is periodically updated. So if somebody has invested into that project in equipment by one vendor, there might be another a need to have it replaced or complemented by another vendor that is going with the times, and so the traffic point, a fast, a quick solution on as to the change of platforms and so on, because that requires not only financial resources but also learning, personnel training, and testing, and painstaking and exacting process. From the point of view of regulatory aspects of Russia, the situation is like as a standalone network, a traffic exchange point must organize for connection to special services, and that equipment is vested on a traffic exchange point at a direct expenditure. And interestingly, the cost of that equipment and is a tenfold to increase the speed. And if we look into how the charge for the services of traffic exchange points, that a tenfold increase in bit rate would induce a threefold cost increase, and that's a disproportion. But nevertheless, apart from it, to make a traffic exchange point successful and interesting, and to make the people actively use it, they should perform very well, really good, from the point of view of availability and from the point of view of client network service. As I already mentioned, the organizational part, an important role is played by long-term, stable, and predictable neutral approach to the members, to the participants, and absence of preferences, and being targeted at long-term development. It's important to bear in mind that there are different networks, and they got slightly different formats of evaluation and perception. And just to say that if for the operators or for the access network to evaluate, to come up with their traffic volume, the capacity of connections to an exchange point, it's just enough to make a test connection. Then content players can do that potentially slightly different way. They might create some sort of virtual node of content delivery and be competitive to on delivery to the networks with traffic exchange points, and it's important to have an open dialogue and be actively involved in all that. And again, as I have noted, the documentary part is important in Russia, but we in Russia have two types of agreements. One is use agreement, and the second is interaction without the design, the subtleties, and with terms of references, documentation, and things like that. So if we take a typical regional point that needs to be placed not in a super modern data center, in many cases that's the best apt place with networks available where it's comfortable to meet together and get connected to this particular point. There's nothing left, and there might be just a regular room with stands and with a continuous power supply, and then comes questions of maintenance and others. And talking in general about Russia, I'll show a map showing all the existing traffic points, and then sometimes they come up on very primitive equipment that could be just a switch, and that could be something already outdated and decommissioned from the network. But now that it's free, you can use it initially. But we need to bear in mind if the traffic goes up and then participants get connected, then modern cutting-edge solutions will be required. From the point of view of public information and services and traffic, there's pretty much many solutions to minimize the load, to gather statistics and advertise the websites. That's no problem for anyone. From the point of view of investigation-related activities, if there's a traffic exchange point based on an operator, they can declare it like as part of you would pay by not being neutral and by having conflicts in the way of development. But from the point of view of communication, there's a role of coordinator interacting with other participants, and initially is the role that's the free time of an enthusiast, and in some cases they dedicate some part of their time for this. And from the point of view of documentation, from the point of view of contact and support, we need to understand immediately that it requires 24/7 support level and full set of documentation required. If we look into the map of Russia, then here in this slide you will see the way the traffic exchange points that are managed by MSK-IX, and you will also see some independent ones. And on the whole, we're talking about the total of 18, and that's 9 MSK-IX and 8 independent ones. The geography is basically laid down here, and you can see that in Russian European part the density is higher. If we go east, then yeah, you will see them pretty rarely. Indeed, that's about the way it happens with the transport infrastructure, and that's shown in red. And of course, the question is how many traffic exchange points could be in Russia. As was already mentioned, there's pretty many of them globally. I'm talking about Africa. The last figure I remember is about 60, and we have about 17 of them. But how many of them could there be? And it's just about 30, if I may say so. Just to add to the ones that are potentially encountered. And talking about a traffic exchange point and to create it, there are two ways. And the first way is to do everything yourself, and there might be some useful information and benefits, and the developments that are already created and systematized by the association. It's available in English, though, but one or another way it requires hands-on qualification. What can we offer as MSK-IX? Actually, the experience over the last 20 years, we have piled up a lot of experience, giant experience, and from the point of view of approaches on who, where, and how to do and how to negotiate, and technologically speaking too. So today, once there is a traffic exchange point popping up, and the people don't want to go through a trial and error method and want a ready-made solution, then in fact we can provide. We can provide some peering infrastructure, and that's public information services, and also everything that goes with back office document generation and technical support and logistics support. But there's no way you can avoid this, and that's actually issues that needs to be tackled, and that starts with dealing with authorities, and that's collocation, and that's placement with remote cards and the cruisings. That's a little bit technical things, but the most important humane and communication thing is the development and building up of a peering community. And thank you for your attention. And hopefully my presentation has done you a lot.
Good.